Good morning. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'm very anxious to continue in the book Codeword Barbelon by P.E. Stuart, one of the most important books that I've read lately, and I'll just sum it up this way. This is a handbook for God's people to educate them about one of the greatest threats, if not the greatest threat, to our churches today, the Jesuit order. Now, for those who've never heard that before, I just plead that you'll stay tuned and take this information on face value and research it for yourself. This is chapter 22 of the book. It's on page 215 if you're following along. This, like every chapter in this book, is the most important chapter in the book, if you get my drift. I'm not kidding you. I'm enthusiastic about every chapter in this book. And this one, I want to impress upon the listeners before I begin that this talks about the subtlety and the genius and the various disguises of the Jesuit order, keeping in mind that the Jesuit order commands each Jesuit to be a member of the Pope's militia for the purpose of destroying Protestantism anywhere and everywhere in the world. Okay? Their main object is the destruction of Protestantism. Now, where might we find the front line of this attack? Right in our own congregations. Now, some listeners, particularly those who don't like the truth, would suggest that Tom is trying to make us all paranoid. He's trying to breed fear and suspicion. Let me put that to rest right now. God's people are told to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We're to know our enemy, to know his disguises. Satan is a formidable foe, and we are his object of hatred. And it's for us to know how he will attack us, and through whom he will attack us. Now, this author dedicated this entire book to educating us about that threat. And you'll find in this book how you can identify one of Satan's Jesuits right in your own church. Pay particular attention, and while I'm reading, think, is there anyone in your congregation that fits these descriptions? The author writes, the Jesuit always accomplishes his purpose, for this creature can metamorphose himself into any form. Trained to develop his powers of adaptation to suit the preferences of those whom he wishes to influence, or whose confidence he desires to possess, the Jesuit will, with the pagans, be a pagan. With the atheist, he will be an atheist or a liberal. With the Jew, he will be a Jew. And with the reformers, he will be a reformer, even an evangelical. In whatever place or vocation he be found, the Jesuit is always a double man, with two distinct missions, one public and the other secret. This license to dissemble, in other words, to pretend to be something other than he is, this license to dissemble was granted to the members of the Society of Jesus by a bull of the Pope, Paul III, which gave every Jesuit a dispensation or a carte blanche forgiveness to lay aside all professions of regard to the papal cause of the Roman Catholic Church and make outward profession to any religion or government they choose, if by doing so they can better do their utmost to extirpate and annihilate forever the heretical Protestant doctrine. That's their aim. Protestantism is their target. Satan cannot succeed in the world as long as there are Bible-believing Christians in it. For God promised that he would be with them always, even unto the end of the world, and that even the gates of hell would not prevail against them. So if Satan is going to have a new world order, a global earthly kingdom, he can only do it by deceiving God's people. And deception is their modus operandi, and the churches are their battlefield. Now he continues. Further, there are men who, although not members of the Jesuit order, are what we might call crypto-Jesuits, not necessarily entitled to the name Jesuit proper, but yet pledged to the aims of the society. As one former pupil of the Jesuits said, their chief objective, quote, is to acquire the highest offices of state for the men they have poisoned with their maxims. All right, the highest offices of state. We're talking about Congress, the executive branch, the presidency, the Oval Office, and we're talking about the Supreme Court. We're talking about the Council on Foreign Relations, anybody who sets domestic and foreign policy in this country. We're talking about the leaders of our economic system in this country, and we're talking about our churches as well, the highest offices in this land. Political intrigue is not the only area of operations for the Jesuit order. He continues, today, it is virtually impossible to know how many Jesuits are really members of the order. Mackenzie says of the Jesuits, quote, the order has secret signs and passwords according to the degrees to which the members belong. And as they wear no particular dress, it is very difficult to recognize them unless they reveal themselves as members of the order, for they may appear as Protestants or Catholics, Democrats or aristocrats, infidels or bigots, according to the special mission with which they are entrusted. And it is well-known fact that members of the Jesuit order of high family and delicate nature are acting as menial servants even in Protestant families, and doing other similar things in aid of the Society of Jesus' purposes. Now let's dissect this a little bit. The Jesuit order has secret signs and passwords. Let me ask you, who else in our society do we know that has secret signs and passwords that a Jesuit might infiltrate easily? The answer's simple. Freemasonry being just one. Every secret society has secret signs and passwords. Now you have to ask yourself, why all the secrecy? What cloak could Satan obtain and don through a secret society? And notice most of the secret society use as their basis charity. Who could criticize a charitable organization like Freemasonry unless they knew and could prove, as this author will eventually in this book, that and already has, by the way, that Freemasonry is just another tool of the Jesuit order. They've infiltrated it a long time ago. That Freemasonry at the top serves the Black Pope in Rome. All right. So, is there a Freemason behind the pulpit in your church? How would you know? Well, on occasion, depending upon who they expect to see in the congregation, they might wear some Freemasonic insignia, like a special ring that a Mason readily recognizes on a brother Mason, or a particular tie tack, or belt buckle, or a particular handshake, or a particular gesture with his hands, or the positioning of his feet, or a wink and a nod. That's how they communicate. Be aware of these means of communication. Watch for them. If you suspect someone behind the pulpit of your church who may be teaching ecumenical baloney, find out where he was educated. Find out if he belongs to any secret societies. Don't walk right up and ask him, because he's going to lie. He's instructed to lie. You have to be subtle, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Okay, they have signs and passwords according to the degrees to which the members belong. In other words, even these societies that serve the Jesuit order are compartmentalized. All right? Their signs and their passwords vary according to the degrees or the degree to which they are initiated. How high are they on the hierarchy of this secret society? And they wear no particular dress. They're instructed to blend in with whatever crowd they are in. Okay, so you have to know how to identify them. You can't necessarily identify them by their dress. And it's very difficult to recognize them unless they reveal themselves as members of the order. And when would they tend to reveal themselves? In private communications and even out in the open by clandestine signs, handshakes, passwords, and gestures. And it says they may appear as Protestants or Catholics. In other words, any religion. They may take on whatever religion they are assigned to infiltrate. They may actually enter a Protestant church and become a Protestant in order to gain the trust and the respect of Protestants, but secretly to work for their destruction. They even infiltrate their own Catholic churches to see what departure their church has taken from the official teaching of the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican teaching. They may pose as Democrats or Republicans. Now, this is laughable because we know today they pose as both Democrats and Republicans. That's why no matter what political party is in power in Congress or the White House, Protestant America is destroyed and Catholic America emerges in strength, consistent with the ecumenical movement. The Jesuits run both political parties in this country. They work their Hegelian dialectic, and for the most part, the people of the United States are completely oblivious to it. One still is faithfully loyal to the Democratic cause, another is faithfully loyal to the Republican cause, and their battle is between themselves, and they never look who's standing ringside rooting them both on and working double-fisted to destroy both of them. The Jesuit order. They pose as aristocrats, infidels, or bigots, according to the special mission with which they are entrusted. It's a well-known fact that the members of the Jesuit order, of high family and delicate nature, are acting as menial servants even in Protestant families. Have you ever been asked to take in a child? Say a family in your community is having a little difficulty and they need a little fresh air, a little time to mend fences, a little distance between one another. Has your pastor ever come to you and say, would you, as a charitable matter, take this child into your home and give her mother a rest? They're working out some particularly difficult situations in their lives, and we just need to help, and we need you, a good, upstanding member of our congregation, take this little child into your home and give her a good place to live and good Christian counseling, and hopefully with prayer and assistance from the church, we can get this family back together. Has anybody ever asked you to do that? Do you think that possibly that child might be instructed what to do when it becomes a member of your family? Now, there you go, Tom, breeding suspicion. No, I'm talking about prudence, educated wisdom, being harmless as doves, but wise as serpents. Know your enemy and his strategies, and this is one of them. To see to it that there's a little Jesuit spy in your house. and doing other things of a similar nature to aid the Jesuit Society's purpose. They'll stop at nothing, trust me. I've experienced some of these things in my own life. Not only do the Jesuits have their own secret passwords, code words, but they are prepared and taught to assume any guise and act on any side of an issue. In other words, they are taught to debate for either side. No matter what side they're assigned to, they can debate. They're taught in their Jesuit schools how to debate any side of an issue. That's to help them be chameleons, to ingratiate themselves to any side to which they may be assigned by their Jesuit general. It says, as if in the end it will be for the Catholic Church's advantage. Everything they do is ultimately for the Roman Catholic Church's advantage, even if it becomes necessary during that defense of the Roman Catholic Church that they openly denounce the Roman Catholic Church and even the Jesuit order. If it, in the long run, it is seen to help the Jesuits infiltrate and destroy Protestantism, every means is a legitimate means. Okay? They are all spies, every one of them. Do you doubt this, dear reader? Doubt it not. Be assured of it. It is part of their catechism. It's part of their very training. It's not a sideline issue. It's the main instruction of the Jesuit order. Did we not read earlier that what is told to the Jesuit in his initiation? Listen to what it says. You have been taught to take sides with the combatants and to act secretly in concert with your brother Jesuit who might be engaged on the other side, but openly opposed to that which you might be connected. Only that the church might be the gainer in the end, unquote. So you can rest assured that on no matter what position is taken in any dialectic, a thesis and an antithesis, there is a Jesuit or a Jesuit coadjutor or some sodality member who is working on both sides, winking and nodding to one another, managing the conflict that they fomented in the first place to manipulate the outcome. And every time, Rome wins. That's the identifying characteristic. Don't be paranoid. Don't be fearful. Be educated and prudent and watchful. They are to act on both sides of every contention, only that the Roman Catholic Church might be the gainer in the end. According to the Jesuits, all such duplicity, deception, and dissembling is not only permissible, but is also justifiable. Ad majorem Dei gloriam. That is Latin for the greater glory of God. For the end always justifies the means. That's their strategy. No morality whatsoever. If whatever they are contemplating, they believe will increase the papacy's power in the world, they are permitted, not only permitted, but lauded in doing whatever it takes, black or white, right or wrong. Now, they are masters of disguise. How can Satan infiltrate the Church of Christ without disguising himself? You know, I've had this discussion on amateur radio. I've talked about this Antichrist in Rome, and, of course, people don't believe it. They think the Pope is a man of God. And I asked them then, what form would Antichrist take? Well, he's going to be a wicked man. Yeah, that's true. He's going to be a wicked man. You know, and they describe him as though he would be Satan himself. Look like a dragon with a dragon's tail, and he's going to sign a peace treaty with Israel, and then he's going to break the peace treaty, yada, 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 yada. We're going to know who this Antichrist is. And I asked him, then how is it that the Bible says he deceives the whole world? You tell me that I'm crazy for suggesting that the papacy is Antichrist. And you're, quite frankly, in the vast majority. As a matter of fact, the lion's share. You often say, well, Tom, you think you're right, and everybody's wrong. Everybody's wrong, and you're the only one that's right. Well, that might be the case in that particular subject, but I know I'm not the only one that knows that the papacy is Antichrist. But nonetheless, what they've just done is convinced me that the Bible was true when it said the whole world would be deceived. And I simply answer, well, you're in agreement with the vast majority. What does the Bible say? That Satan will deceive the whole world. Now you say that I'm only 1 in a million or 1 in a billion. That might be true. But what is to say that because you belong to a majority belief that you are right based on the Scripture that says the whole world is deceived? And pretty soon it gets quiet. And then all they can say is, well, you're wrong. You're just wrong, Tom. And that's all the argument they have. I want the readers to see. P.D. Stuart wants the readers to see that Antichrist is a master of disguises. The following account will, I hope, assist the reader to see how this is possible. In 1574, a man appeared in Stockholm, Sweden, having been invited there by King John III. This was in 1568. King John III reigned from 1568 to 1592. This man was introduced as a visiting Lutheran scholar, Professor Norritus Nielsen. His lectures were so eloquent and powerful that the halls were filled whenever he spoke around Stockholm. Even the king himself regularly attended Nielsen's lectures. Jesuit author Manfred Barthel takes up the account from here. Listen to what he says. The seminarians, that is, the Protestants who attended these lectures, were struck by the judicious even-handedness of Professor Nielsen's approach. He was careful to present arguments on both sides of every question, and as the seminars drew on, the possible objections that he offered to Luther's teachings began to proliferate alarmingly. The king himself was finally compelled to intercede in Luther's behalf. But King John, strictly an amateur theologian, was no match for the professor and was forced to concede defeat. The audience only later realized that Nielsen had not only stood Luther on his head, but had done so by citing the doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church. What was not made clear, at least for some time, was that this was strictly a put-up job and that the professor was actually a Catholic himself and a Jesuit to boot, and after Father Nielsen had successfully sowed doubt and confusion among the Lutheran clergy, he was recalled to Rome. And we're going to discover the king was secretly Catholic too. Jesuits working on both sides of the line, arguing both sides of every argument, but teaching Catholicism in the main. We'll return to the book when we come back in the break. You're listening to Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. We'll be right back.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a reestablished Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
Okay, welcome back to Inquisition Update on First Amendment Radio. Now, returning to this vignette that we talked about just before the break. The king invited this man, this secret Jesuit father, this secret Jesuit priest, Nielsen, who posed as a Lutheran apologist. Articulate man, pleasant in demeanor, he wowed the crowd. But then careful listeners realized that he was destroying Martin Luther and at the same time preaching Roman Catholic doctrine. And even the king was compelled to stand up and take defense of Luther himself. And after this Jesuit priest had sown confusion, consternation, and division among the Lutheran clergy in the country, he was recalled to Rome. That's how the Jesuits work. Sowing confusion clandestinely in the churches. Contention, division. Now, Professor Nielsen, who was a Jesuit priest, was not an exception to the Jesuit order. He was the classic prototype of a Jesuit for whom the ends always justify the means. In 1700 saw another Jesuit deceiver, Lacunza, born in South America in 1731. He wrote under the Jewish name Ben Ezra, even addressing the Jews as brethren in his preface. He entitled his book, quote, The Coming of Messiah in Glory and Majesty, unquote. It taught futurism. Now, I'll just stop and explain for those who don't know. Futurism is the predominant belief among Protestants today that the Antichrist won't appear until the last 7 years of time. Okay? It's a lie. Antichrist has been with us ever since the Papacy took St. Peter's throne, called himself the vicar or the replacement of Christ. We need not look in the future for an Antichrist. He's with us all along. He's persecuted and soaked the earth with Protestant blood, Bible-believing blood, ever since. Now, this Jesuit priest, posing as a Jew, referring to the Jews as brethren, even entitled his book, The Coming Messiah in Glory and Majesty, intended for Jewish readers. It taught futurism and was one of the first to falsely interpret the woman of Revelation 12 as the future apostate church. The book received wide circulation and was instrumental in turning the Protestant world to a Catholic futurist interpretation concerning Antichrist. So this book perverted Protestant belief. All right? The historian Newman gives this eloquent assessment, quote, "The Jesuit missionary or worker in any sphere may adopt his dress, manner of life, and occupation to the exigencies of the occasion. He may disguise himself, he may configure himself as a Protestant or a Brahmin, if by doing so he can gain an entrance otherwise difficult for Catholic teaching." The story is familiar of a Jesuit who mastered the Sanskrit language and the Vedas, which is the religious book of that nation. He assumed the dress and the mode of life of a Brahmin priest and finally wrote and palmed off as ancient a Veda in which the Roman Catholic Christianity under a thin disguise was taught. How clever. He wrote his own Veda to teach Roman Catholic doctrine. Former Catholic priest De Sanctis, who was also a professor of theology in Rome and the official theological censor for the office of the Inquisition, had this to say about the clandestine operations of the Jesuits. His disclosures give us an indication of the near impossibility of knowing the number of Jesuits in service at any given time. Quote, "Despite all the persecutions they have met with, they have not abandoned England, where there are a greater number of Jesuits than in Italy. There are Jesuits in all classes of society. In Parliament, the equivalent in America is Congress. Among the English clergy, they are Protestant clergy. That's what he's referring to. And here in America, they are the Protestant clergy. Among the Protestant laity, you can bet there are Jesuit coadjutors even among the laity in your churches, even in the higher stations, that is, in the government, and the judiciary, and the legislature, and the State Department, and the War Department, and the Economics Department, and every other department." He says, "I could not comprehend how a Jesuit could be a Protestant priest, or how a Protestant priest could be a Jesuit, but my confessor silenced my scruples by telling me, omnia munda mundus, and that St. Paul became a Jew when he might save the Jews. It was no wonder, therefore, that a Jesuit should feign himself a Protestant for the conversion of the Protestants. But pay attention, I entreat you, to discover the religious movement in England termed Puseyism." Okay? Now he's going to tell us a little bit about Puseyism. He said the English clergy, which are Protestant, I interject, were formally too much attached to their articles of faith to be shaken from them. Okay? They were 39 articles of Protestant faith. Okay? And the English clergy had taught the laity these 39 articles. And they would not depart from them. So the Jesuits of England tried another plan. This was to demonstrate from history and ecclesiastical antiquity, that is, ancient documentation, whence through the exertion of the Jesuits concealed among its clergy might arise a studious attention to Christian antiquity. Sounds like a laudable thing, right? To teach Christian antiquity. I mean, after all, that's what I do here on Inquisition Update, to teach you Christian history. All right. They readily accepted this. It said this was designed, however, to occupy the clergy in long, laborious, and abstruse investigation, and to alienate them from their Bibles. Puseyism is a living testimony to the necessity of Catholicism in the midst of our enemies. It is a worm at the root of which, skillfully nourished by our exertions, will waste Protestantism till it is destroyed. So what was the strategy of Puseyism? To engage the Protestant clergy into an area of discussion and study, a laborious, complicated, time-consuming, and interesting study that would alienate them or take their time away from the Bible and their 39 articles. So in the meantime, the Jesuits could continue to disrupt the Protestant faith in England. They'll use any strategy they can. Now, I want to remind my listeners, I pay a great deal of attention to history on this program, and the study of the Jesuits, and the study of the Vatican, and the study of Roman Catholic history. But never, never, ever is it intended to take one moment of your time away from the Scriptures. I'm allotted 1 hour a day, and I don't impose upon anybody longer than 1 hour a day here on Inquisition Update. Be educated. Take an hour of your day, be a faithful listener here at Inquisition Update, but spend more time in the Scriptures, because that's where our salvation and our wisdom comes from. And like I tell so many of my listeners who are beginning to comprehend this Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, it's now even more fascinating to read the Bible, because with this understanding, the Bible literally becomes alive. It has all new meaning to you. You'll find that when you read the Scriptures again after comprehending this, God has left us hints all throughout the Bible that we can clearly identify this Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. And Bill Hughes and I, in our discussions on Thursdays, have pointed some of these things out. And you've seen for yourself that even when the Bible discusses Nebuchadnezzar, he was telling us secrets that we can identify, facts on the ground today regarding the papacy. It makes the Bible a whole new book, not because it changes the content, but it changes your understanding. Your understanding is more complete, and you can apply it today. It's a living book, and it is more relevant today for us than we ever thought. After we comprehend the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, and thanks to people like P.D. Stuart and so many others who are doing this research, the Bible has a new attraction for me, and it will for you too. Never ever think that Inquisition Update or anybody else on Liberty Radio Live is dedicated to taking time away from you from reading your Bible. The Bible is the basis of all of our understanding. It is the rock and foundation of our faith. It's the Word of God, and He is the Word. So spend the lion's share of your time in God's book, the Word of God, and then listen to Inquisition once a day for an hour, and hone your understanding. Okay, Professor De Sanctis goes on to say that the Jesuits are concealed among the English clergy. Do you think they might be concealed among the American clergy? Absolutely. And it says, even in Parliament. Do you think this might apply to Congress as well? Absolutely. Consider a key figure of the English Parliament, Tony Blair. Stephen Knight, the deceased author of The Brotherhood, has said that the Palace of Westminster, home of the British Parliament, is used as a meeting place for the New Welcome Masonic Lodge. The New Welcome Masonic Lodge. Yes, that's right. The British Parliament allows a meeting place for the Masonic Lodge. And it says the adorable Tony Blair is a high-ranking Freemason and a member of the 1591 Stockholm Lodge. He's also a secret Romanist. He's a secret Catholic. Now, this book now is a bit dated because we know that Tony Blair has made an open confession of Catholicism. Okay, he's converted to Catholicism. So has Newt Gingrich, by the way. You know, one of the top dogs at the Council on Foreign Relations. He's the one that's making America Catholic. All right? One of the big proponents of NAFTA and GATT. You know, sending all of our trade, sending all of our industry out of this country. He's serving the Pope, not the American people. Closet Catholics. We've got closet Catholics in every high office in this country. And, of course, I won't go on to George W. Bush, but I've made that repeatedly. I've made that point repeatedly here on the broadcast. The adorable Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, is a high-ranking Freemason and a member of the 1591 Stockholm Lodge. He's also a secret Roman Catholic, a Jesuit in short robes, says P.D. Stuart, and I believe he was a secret Catholic all along, even before his election as Prime Minister, says P.D. Stuart. And I'd have to agree. You know, he worked side by side with his little skull and bonesman, George W. Bush. They were on the same page. They were waging a papal proxy war against the heretic Muslims, the Shia. And they did it on Protestant blood, both in England and the United States. Very, very successful servants of the Pope. I mean, who benefits most when Protestant USA and Protestant Great Britain die on the battlefield, killing other heretics in Afghanistan and Iraq? The Pope wins hand over fist. Not only does he profit from the war in selling the munitions through the Jesuit bankers and the Federal Reserve systems all over the world, but he's extirpating heretics, Protestants, and Muslim. The papacy wins on both sides of the coin. It's heads I win, tails you lose. And Tony Blair and George W. Bush were faithful servants of the Antichrist in Rome. Okay? The article by Steve Pierce entitled My Peace I Give You, and published in the January 1998 edition of Workers of Iniquity, alleges that it is the Roman Catholic Church that is behind Tony Blair and his New Labor Party. The Times of April 17, 2003, reported in a front-page headline, Blair admits he is strongly drawn to Catholicism, unquote. And Alessandro Zangrando reported in his Roman landscape column of the Latin Mass magazine, quote, Prime Minister Tony Blair of Great Britain seems intent on embracing the Catholic faith. Blair, a guest last August in the villa of Prince Guicciardini Strozzi, asked and obtained permission to assist at a private Catholic Mass. The day of Ferragosto, or the Feast of Assumption, there was no attempt to be discreet because he attended the parish church at Casona. The Masses were celebrated by Father Ian Wilson and Father Brian Lovery, and Bishop Mauro Fusi of Italy was also present, and Tony Blair read the first scripture reading and the prayer of the faithful. Moreover, he got in line and received the Holy Communion of the Roman Catholic Church. It's a fact. It's a fact of history. Tony Blair was no more Protestant than the man in the moon. You don't take a Roman Catholic Mass. No priest is authorized to put the Eucharist on your tongue unless you are a devout Roman Catholic. Tony Blair was a closet Catholic all along. And a careful study of English history will teach you that Rome had control of the British crown almost always. All right. The Jesuits are also well represented in the University of Cambridge, as Augustine Birrell tells us, and they have infiltrated the Church of England, the Protestant Church of England, so much so that those in the higher degrees of Masonry have been called Protestant Jesuits. Listen to that, Protestant Jesuits. That's what English Freemasonry is called, Protestant Jesuits. And that's what they are here in the United States, too. Rome is so shrewd that they took a Protestant secret society called Freemasonry and got control of the upper echelons and have literally used Freemasonry to serve the papacy. Rome increases strength in the United States today through Freemasonry. And you can refer to them as Protestant Jesuits. And you'll find them occupying the space behind the pulpit in your church. And you can bet they'll be teaching you, by whatever subtle means they can muster, Roman Catholic doctrine, taking you away from your Bible and directing your attention to that which God most abhors: idolatry. Idolatry in its most despicable form. It's called the Mass. It's called the Eucharist. And every Protestant church in this country needs to be aware that eventually you'll be taught to regard the communion bread as the Eucharist. That is to bring you in full communion with the Apostolic See and the Church of Rome, the Church of Antichrist. Be aware, be watchful. I'm not trying to sow paranoia and discord. I'm trying to teach God's people to be wary of the enemy, the wolf in sheep's clothing that may well seek to occupy your pulpit. And what will be the identifying signs that you'll use to recognize that Rome has infiltrated your sanctuary? Become familiar with the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. Learn how to recognize it. Learn their language. Learn how to find out when the Pope begins to speak in your church through some Jesuit coadjutor, whether he's behind the pulpit or whether he's sitting right beside you in the pew. He may well be carrying the authorized King James Version of the Bible, but his speech and his actions will depart from the Word of God. Mark it down. And he says there is an amazing story that during the 18th century there was a dispute between the French lodges of Freemasonry and the Freemasons of England. The French Masons issued circulars in which they referred to the English Freemasons as Jesuits. How many Jesuit Freemasons have clandestinely entered the Protestant communion? We may never know. But we do know that they have taken a most solemn oath to infiltrate Protestant organizations and undermine them from within. Quote, this is directly from the Jesuit oath. Now pay particular attention. Quote, I do further declare that I will help, assist, and advise, and to do my utmost to extirpate the heretical Protestants' doctrine. That's straight from the Jesuit oath. Read it for yourself. To this end, the Jesuit order sends its missionaries, emissaries around the globe, particularly to Protestant nations, to create schools, colleges, and seminaries, and to work in the various vocations and professions. To quote Dr. J.A. Wiley, quote, there was no disguise they could not assume, and therefore there was no place into which they could not penetrate. They could enter unheard the closet of the monarch, or the cabinet of the statesman. They could sit unseen in convocation or general assembly and mingle unsuspected in the deliberations and debates. There was no tongue they could not speak, no creed or belief they could not profess, and thus there was no church whose membership they might not enter and whose functions they might not discharge. They could execrate the Pope with the Lutheran and swear solemn league with the Covenanter, that is, the Presbyterians and the Anglican churches. And J.A. Wiley continued to warn in another place, there's no disguise which the Jesuits will not wear, no art they will not employ, no motive they will not feign, no creed they will not profess, provided only he can acquit himself a true soldier in the Jesuit army and accomplish the work on which he has been sent forth, and that is to destroy Protestantism, hook, line, and sinker, root and branch. Satan cannot survive and succeed in this world as long as it is occupied by God-fearing, Bible-believing Protestant Christians. And it is Protestantism that the Jesuit order has sworn to destroy in this world. And you must be aware of how they wage war. Mackenzie figured them out well when he said, quote, "Their spies are everywhere, of all apparent ranks of society, and they may appear learned and wise, or simple or foolish, as their instructions run," unquote. For as the Jesuit Richard Ruscovich reminds us, the members of the great secret society, the Jesuit order, have long assumed different forms when they wish to disguise their presence or influence in an organization. Quote, "Throughout its own history, the Society of Jesus has served this social mission." Remember that phrase, social mission. What is the social mission of the Jesuit order? To destroy Protestantism. It says, throughout its own history, the Society of Jesus has served this social mission of the Roman Catholic Church. From its very earliest origins, the Jesuit social apostolate has assumed various forms according to different times and places. In other words, they're like chameleons. They advance right along with the times so that they can fit in any crowd and so that they can work their diabolical Hegelian dialectic so that whatever outcome there is, they establish it and it benefits the Roman Catholic Church. To offer some sense of the audacity, double agency of the Jesuit priest, we might secretly occupy a Protestant pulpit. Who might secretly occupy a Protestant pulpit? I next clip an extract from page 50 of the Jesuits by the celebrated author J.A. Wiley. Quote, "One day in 1568, a man named Thomas Heath preached in the pulpit of Rochester Cathedral. He inveighed severely in his sermon against the prayer book. It hurt his conscience as being too little scriptural. He professed a high Calvinism. After sermon, a letter was found in the pulpit which he had inadvertently dropped, addressed to him by a leading English Jesuit residence in Madrid. It revealed the fact that this zealous Protestant was a Jesuit in disguise, although he had spoken against his own order, the Jesuit order. In searching the lodges, the Queen's Arms in Rochester," I'll finish this quote tomorrow, we're running out of time, "but learn the lesson from history. How have the Jesuits infiltrated Protestantism in the past? Look for signs of that happening in your ecumenical church today." I'll see you tomorrow on Inquisition Update. Thanks for listening.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built, That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.